following is paid programming. Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner and founder of Asset Management Resources, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. We call it Something More because we like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients across the country, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Legacy and estate planning we put together for one of the segments of the webinar, and I think it's important that people enlarge their vision when they're thinking about estate planning and include legacy planning in that. You know, we certainly need to complete the documents, and we did a review of the documents that are commonly used in estate planning, and all those things need to be done. We need to select an executor, we need a will, we need a healthcare proxy, we need a living will, you know, we need a power of attorney, all these things that people typically think about, you know, end of life planning. But we also should be thinking about how we want to be remembered with our legacy, the legacy we want to create as an individual. And you can do part of that during your life, certainly. You can do things while you're alive. And we talked about a number of ways, including giving while you're alive, charitable, maybe a charitable remainder trust. We went into detail with that, and that's something we can help with our clients. But also the legacy you leave when you pass, meaning where your assets go, how they go, in what form they go, to who they go. And we talked about an array of things, that scenarios, and certainly encourage people to think about their estate planning a little bit larger and think about the legacy they want to create with their assets and in the messages that they send to their loved ones, and including you know, many people today are using video messages to loved ones to be included, a legacy letter, which you know a lot about, Chris.
We had a good presentation on having an ethical will, is what she called it, but
right.
A legacy letter. This is one of the presentations we gave to our clients in the past. But I think these concepts are really important. So we often spend time to reinforce your point, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
We spend time thinking about the stuff as legacy.
Right.
Who's going to inherit the house on the Cape, or you know, which money will go to which heir, or what, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe a business that's a family business, etc. Right.
Right.
These are material oriented things, but we often don't think as much when we talk about legacy about how do we pass on our values? What are some of these family stories that are tied to our maybe important stories about how life lessons were learned, or these kinds of things? And that's what an ethical will can do. In this kind of commentary, I often think about talking to people about the idea of a donor advised fund.
Right.
A donor advised fund is also an opportunity to share values. When you think about, you know, hey, is civic rent is the term that others have used. You know, is it important in our family to share our resources for the community in one form or another? Let's put together an effort, a donor advised fund, where we're going to put money aside, and as a family, from time to time, we'll gather to decide, what are we going to do with some of these monies? How are we going to share their resources with the community? And what's serving, who has an opinion? Everyone gets a turn, or maybe we build consensus, or whatever it may be. But I think just the idea of something like that is a value statement that you're sharing with your heirs as a legacy.
Right. Every time those members of that committee, if you will, get together, they are reminded about the donor, the person
Yes.
who made this possible, and are reminded of the values and who that person was. So it's reinforcing the legacy that the donor wanted and doing something good in the community. We also talked about, various special circumstances and how sometimes, you don't just want to give a pile of money to someone. We certainly have situations in our families that if someone an heir or beneficiary or whatever the structure was, received a lump sum of money upon your death, you could actually cause that person harm. We talked about maybe if you're, which I believe is one of my goals, about helping your family become more educated, and college education expenses, how you can do that in your estate plan, and lots of different, maybe so there's someone in your family with special needs that you have to think about, all these things. And one final point, Chris, is to build this estate plan and your legacy planning with your team of advisors. So certainly your financial advisor, perhaps your accountant, and your estate planning attorney, and a experienced estate planning attorney, to work this together as a team so that your financial plan is working with your estate plan, and you're not going to have issues where you have to sell things off to raise money for taxes, or you're not going to have family strife because of something that needs to be disposed of in a certain way. So all these things we talked about on the webinar in a more organized and detailed manner, if people would like to take a look at that.
Yeah, so check that out at amrfinancial.com if you think it would be of help to you. Remember, of course, as well that we're available to be a resource to you if you have questions, and offer a complimentary consultation. On the topic of estate planning, we did mention as well that the week of I think it's the 26th and 27th were the dates, but Boyd & Boyd is having the last of their estate planning webinar or seminars. So if you're local and want to check out a good lesson on estate planning, you can take care of that and find out about that at boydandboydpc.com. With regard to our segment today, thanks guys for being with me and talking about this. There was what we discussed and much more. So if you're thinking you're getting close to that retirement red zone, go check it out on amrfinancial.com. Until next time, keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's financial planning, portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at amrfinancial.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901 or send us your questions to radio@amrfinancial.com.
Families work a lifetime to develop wealth, and the quality of the estate plan that they get will really drive whether or not that wealth stays with that family or gets dispersed out. The estate plan can really help to crystallize things so that the wealth stays with the family, with the intended recipient. And I think that's an important part of what we're trying to do. To me, my clients are like a part of my family. I hope they feel the same way about us, but I certainly feel that way about them. I just want to be there to help them and guide them through the difficult time that they're about to go through. And if we can take any of that burden off of them, that's important.
Call 508-775-7800 or visit boydandboydpc.com. Your family will be grateful. You create the legacy. We create the plan.
Do you have a professional doing your payroll? If not, you should consider Capital Payroll Systems because they are the professionals. Capital Payroll Systems is the dependable service that provides accurate information and timely service. Capital Payroll is the worry-free service that provides total tax filing and new hire reporting. And Capital Payroll Systems is the personalized service that continually offers unmatched customer assistance and time-saving solutions.
Hi, this is Chris Boyd of Asset Management Resources. We're thrilled with the professionals of Capital Payroll Systems because they make my life easy. I don't have to worry about deadlines or filings and fines. I just talk to Pam or Linda and Terry, and they do all the work. Simplify your life. Talk to Capital Payroll Systems. They are the professionals.
So if you're not using the professionals, call them toll free at 800-298-0008. That's 800-298-0008. Or visit them at capitalpayroll.com. You'll be very glad you did.
I'm lost without him. He took care of everything, all the investment issues. I have no idea how to manage now.
When the time comes when you need that extra help, turn to Asset Management Resources.
Hi, Chris Boyd here with something more for your financial well-being. What brings life meaning for some is significance. For me, working with widowed clients after the devastation of the loss of a life's partner is when it's clear we make a difference. Oftentimes when couples hire AMR, the reason isn't for improved performance or better risk management, or even the convenience that working with a professional fiduciary can provide. Rather, it's because they want to be sure a spouse is well cared for with a professional they can trust, without fear of product sales or costly commissions.
Asset Management Resources, LLC, is a registered investment advisor, amrfinancial.com, for those intent on a secure retirement.
Is paid programming. Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner and founder of Asset Management Resources, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. We call it Something More because we like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients across the country, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Welcome back to Something More with Chris Boyd. Thanks for being with me. I'm joined by Jeff Perry. Just as a quick aside, Jeff, for our listeners who listen on podcast or on radio, we've started posting the show on YouTube. And I was just enjoying the visuals going along with our show open. And I love the little setting at the end where the family's sitting around. Can't wait to hear the Something More with Chris Boyd.
I like the people cheering.
Yeah.
Thousands of people sitting there in a stadium or an arena or something cheering for us.
I was thinking that was what was the quality.
I missed that episode, I think.
Yeah, right. Well, anyway, just as a reminder to our listeners and viewers, if you aren't paying attention to where you can get it, there's all kinds of places you can listen to or participate in our program. We are available on the radio weekly on the iHeart radio station WXTK 95 WXTK, or on the iHeart radio app from 3 to 5 on Saturdays. Alternatively, you can catch us through our podcast, which we put out on pretty much everywhere you get your podcasts, or now also on our YouTube channel. So go to our YouTube channel. Actually, what is that? AMR Financial, I think, is the YouTube channel. Oh, Something More with Chris Boyd is no, that's the, I've lost track, Jeff.
Well, the best way to get it is to go to amrfinancial.com, and on the top of our webpage, you see links to all of our social media outlets, including YouTube. So
there you go.
If you can't find us, go to our page, and it'll link you over. And also, as a favor, if you like our show, would you hit subscribe? The more people subscribing, the more notice, the better our message gets out, the more people we can help. And if you like something in the show, give us a comment, give us a rating. And if you don't like the show, then just keep moving on.
Yeah. True.
Would your mother tell you, or the old saying?
That's something nice to say.
Say nothing. Yep. So, no, just kidding. We appreciate your feedback, and thank you for listening.
Yeah, and along those lines, if you ever want to reach out to us for a show idea or a topic you'd like us to cover, please send us an email at radio@amrfinancial.com. Yeah. Jeff, what are we going to talk about in this episode? I want to make sure our listeners, sorry, we got a little sidetracked there. We want to jump right in.
We've been very, in the last few podcasts and radio show segments, we've been really hyper-focused on planning for retirement. We've had our Retirement Red Zone webinar, which is also on our website, amrfinancial.com. How about we talk a little politics? What's going on in D.C.? We know our clients like to talk to us about it, so why don't we spend a segment talking about what's going on in D.C. and maybe even the presidential race?
Sounds good to me. There's so much going on lately with the budget discussions. Most of us think in terms of our year on a calendar year, but in Washington D.C., the fiscal year
Right.
Starts October 1st and ends at the end of the month.
Which is coming quickly. We're
yeah.
late September here, so.
So every year, the government is supposed to, the Congress is supposed to kind of lay out whether nine different parts of this. I forget what it is, but they've got all these different parts of the budget that they have to pass, and so
they don't do a very good job at it. If you were giving Congress, either party, so I'm a Republican just for disclosure, but either party here gets an F for their budgetary responsibility.
Yeah, it's frustrating to see, and you can point to a variety of ways to interpret that. One is because it seems like it's such a challenge just to get them on track. How many years do we go through continuing resolutions and kind of getting a late start on what the actual budget is going to be, and then aside from that is how much debt do we assume every year where we're not spending within our means, so to speak.
Well, we can go back to the current situation in Washington, but this last week, the United States national debt, so deficit and debt are two different things. Deficit is that we're spending more in any given year than our budget, and then the debt is the accumulated amount, right?
Right.
So for the first time, we have our debt, what we owe our country, over $33 trillion. And we've never been that high. People argue it's not as high because of cost of
percentage of GDP or that kind of thing. Yeah.
So regardless of how people spin it, some of it's accurate, some of it's not. Whoever's talking, I guess it depends. But we have a record level of debt, and we have the deficit from our current fiscal year is one of the largest deficits we've ever had, and so going into the next fiscal year, as you said, starting in October, the current situation in Washington is, if I had to pick one word, is chaos. The Wall Street Journal this past week described the Republicans are in charge of the House, which constitutionally which is where barely, but that's where the budget's supposed to start. So Speaker McCarthy, who's the Speaker of the House and the Republican leader, should be able to get his members together to at least pass an initial bill to get the discussion going, right? So that's where we are. The Wall Street Journal described the Republican caucus as a circle of Republicans, in this case, shooting at each other,
circular firing squad.
Thank you. The term lost me, but that's what they called it, and it's accurate. You have different wings of the party. You have, McCarthy's more of a moderate, and a large number of the elected members of Congress are moderates. You have that group, and you used to have a group called the Freedom Caucus. They're still there, and they were the conservative part of the caucus, very principled, many of them, and now I see a third group in the Republican caucus forming from the mostly, not entirely, but mostly from the Freedom Caucus, where people have these very conservative values. They have certain beliefs that they want to promote, certainly in the budget process, but they don't want to just be obstructionists to getting something done. I mean, you have members of the party, which, as I said, I'm a Republican, so I'm being critical of my own house here. You have members of the Republican caucus in DC that say they won't pass any budget, or they won't pass a budget if there's funding to Ukraine, or they won't pass or then you have the senator from Alabama saying he won't allow the military promotions unless he gets progress on an abortion travel thing in the military. So this tone of obstructionism, you can be principled, but you can't win every fight in
it's not the nature of government.
Group. I mean, you're one of 435 individuals in the House. I am very frustrated with the members of my party who are deciding just to be obstructionists rather than working together with their caucus and with the other members of Congress who are not in their party to have a responsible budget and present it to the American people. It's very frustrating.
Well, it certainly is frustrating, I think, for Americans generally to see a dysfunctional government, dysfunctional Congress. When it comes to the budget process, it's kind of like the founding element of this is like the absolute necessity, right? You have to. There's only so many things you have to do. This is one of them.
If you wrote a job description for a congressman, the number one thing would be the appropriations process or the budget process.
Right. And so in any case, what to expect remains, just one of these things where it's an ongoing process. But, we've seen worries in the past about government shutdowns and, where we'll stand with all that. The worry you have is just, will there be this kind of obstruction? And when it comes to getting things done, or even, some things of importance, you can kind of muddle through with some of this temporarily as positioning. I think when we were talking about the debt ceiling, you were talking about some of this is leverage and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that's still that mindset of leverage, but I find it frustrating too, I guess. All I'm saying.
Well, when I made those comments, we were literally months away. But now, and this is a different situation. They got through that.
Yeah.
But now we're days away. And so it just doesn't affect Congress and, the people who work in D.C. It affects stock market, certainly. Worries about government dysfunction affects our investments. Yep. It affects people in the military. It affects people on different programs. It affects the ability of agencies. The big one that's been in the news is FEMA. They're out of money, basically, for their response ability to level 1 or level 2 response. Their level 1 response funds are gone. They're still functioning, but it has real impacts on people, and our congressmen and our senators should be, specifically our congressmen, our members of the House, should be much more responsible. I was in the state legislature, certainly a much less role than our members in Congress, but the same principles apply. I was in the minority party, and I often didn't like what was going on because I was in the minority party. However, you have to learn that you do your best, you fight another day, and you move on. But there's certain things that you have to get done. You can't just try to be an obstructionist all the time because you're not serving the people that elected you to represent them, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You mentioned the size of the scale of the government debt, and I don't even know how that takes into account or doesn't. I think doesn't take into account the unfunded mandates when it comes.
It does not.
Social Security, Medicare, those kind of things.
It does not. It's only our current debt.
You shared a recent article with me not too long ago about not only that, but consumer debt. Debt is growing everywhere we look. I think it was something close to $10 billion in credit card debt.
You're right. It was the credit card usage. This was an article on Investopedia, which is a pretty unbiased. I don't know what you think about it, but it's a pretty unbiased resource.
It's a good resource. Good.
Yep. So the headline is credit card usage jumps as consumers add $10.4 billion in debt, $9.6 billion revolving debt, 773 million for auto loans and other non-revolving debt. And the total outstanding debt on consumer credit right now is approaching $5 trillion. So I guess it's the same discussion with different players. Like, how much debt?
Well, again, we've had this conversation with Brian in the past, and like, not all debt is bad debt. There is, and I don't mean bad debt as like debt that's not being paid. I mean, not all debt is negative, and it's just one has to be careful with the level of debt they acquire. And we've gone from this experience where it seemed as though in the pandemic, people had been saving, in this aftermath of the pandemic where money was in people's pockets and had reserves. Now we're going the other extreme. Of course, inflation has been ramped up. And people are spending more, and now we're starting to see this could be a worry because it may influence people's ability to spend. Similarly, you've talked about this in the past, Jeff, that in the coming days, the student loans are going to have to be repaid again. This means that people's discretionary resources are going to be tighter, right? They're going to be fewer dollars because you're going to have to now spend more money on paying for those student loans that had a little holiday for those payments, essentially. Hopefully people were setting money aside and preparing for some of this, but
well, if you look at the consumer debt, you would, I mean, it's not a one-on-one comparison, but you have to think that the trend is that people are not saving the money, that they're spending money that they don't have. And so it's not good if you're looking at consumer spending in the future, when you add inflation, when you add in the student loans, when you add in the growing total consumer debt. The consumer has been strong through the last post-pandemic period. They've lasted longer than many people on Wall Street and the talking heads on our TVs predicted, right? They've kept the economy strong out of recession. So it comes down to the household, or it goes all the way up to the Congress, these issues. It's the same discussion. How much debt is too much for your house, whether that be your house on Main Street or your House of Representatives?
Well put. I do think, though, that this kind of ties into another news item this week, which was the idea, and incidentally, we're recording our comments on the 21st of September. So the Federal Reserve this week opted not to raise rates, but kind of held the possibility that there may be another 0.25% rate increase over the course of the year, though nothing definitive. I think this particular issue of, again, we had, I think, good indications of employment right now, that there's not a sense that the economy is spiraling or anything like that. But, these kind of things, consumer debt rising, the fact that, there probably is going to be less discretionary money available for people because of things like student debt. The costs of borrowing have gone up. If you talk to some people buying cars recently, so you run into these kinds of questions and the challenges that presents. And, right now the economy seems relatively stable. Inflation is tamer than it's been, not quite to the level that the Federal Reserve would like, but close to that 3% range, as opposed to these double-digit inflation that kind of worry that I think we were very close to not long ago. And so with regard to the Fed, I think investors can think differently about this. It's whether or not there's a 0.25% increase at this point is maybe less consequential than when we were dealing with the drastic increases in rates that we had, going from 0 to 5 and whatever it is now, 5.5, something like that.
Right.
So that may not be as burdensome or worrisome. It is interesting to think about. I heard a conversation on one of the financial networks with a former Fed official for the St. Louis Fed, Bullard, and talking about how long does it take for the interest rate hikes to work their way into the economy, and his comment was that maybe not as long as it used to.
Yeah, the old thought was 12 to 18 months, right? So.
His thought was that's not really today. That's things happen faster, and the impact.
I think that's legitimate, right?
I think that's true. I thought it was an interesting point, and so in any case, how we'll see the impact. But there is still this issue that there is some lag effect in whether or not the economy will slow materially from where we are. Something to be watched, but it doesn't seem to be an urgent thing.
It doesn't seem to be.
No.
And pretty soon. In a matter of just a couple of months, the nation's focus, and to some degree the markets, not as much as the news, but the markets will start to think about the presidential race next year.
Elections. Yeah, good point. Some interesting changing dynamics appear to be starting to
my candidate seems to be slipping.
Yeah.
I laugh. I don't know why I laughed. I don't want him to slip, but so it might disclosure. I'm in Florida, and my candidate is my governor, Ron DeSantis, and he did a great job during the pandemic. I think he's a great manager. He's a Navy veteran. He's got a great family. I think he checks all the boxes and more, but I'm not in the majority opinion. And I'm starting to look at polls specifically in the states of the early primaries, Chris.
Yeah, see who's getting traction.
Yeah, because that's what really matters. You can have a national poll, and what's that mean? It doesn't mean anything right now.
Yeah.
So
now, is the former president still hanging like so solidly to his lead, or is that given any erosion as well?
A little bit of erosion. And I don't know if it's. I mean, let's face it. He's got a mounting story of legal troubles, right?
Yeah.
So does that start to impact? And he didn't show up at the first debate. He's not showing up at the second debate. So
when is that, by the way? That second debate?
It's
coming up, right?
Yeah, it's this coming Wednesday, I believe.
Okay.
Wednesday or Thursday. Yep, I think it's Wednesday. So as Republican voters are watching the debates and or being concerned about legal trouble and what that means, I think this time it makes sense to look at these other candidates. And looking at Iowa specifically, which is the first caucus, and that's in January. Trump's on top. He's in the 40s. Ron DeSantis is still second, but he's down to 15%. Nikki Haley's in third, Tim Scott in fourth, and Ramaswamy in fifth. And that's pretty.
These polls, you do start to see Nikki Haley starting to have see some ascendancy in some of these early states.
You do. In New Hampshire, she's in third as well. Ramaswamy's in second. And well, it's really a statistical dead heat for second in New Hampshire with Ramaswamy, Haley, and Chris Christie all vying for that second place seat. And we were talking off air recently, and if one of these candidates, probably not DeSantis, unless he changes something drastically, but if let's just say Nikki Haley, for example, because she seems to be the up and comer right now, I think, if she does well in Iowa, that makes people in New Hampshire and other states say, oh, I haven't really considered her. She looks like an alternative.
Or maybe for people looking for that alternative.
Or whoever it is, right?
Validate around, who would that be?
And then you start to see some of the candidates that we're not even talking about who won't be on the stage on Wednesday also because they didn't qualify. They just start to see that there's no path to victory for them. They start to drop out, and the numbers of candidates starts to get less and less. And I don't think those people go to Trump. If say, for example, Pence drops out and maybe the governors of Arkansas and North Dakota drop out, and small numbers, but those voters don't go to Trump probably.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
A consolidation of support either for or against the former president, I think, is going to happen over the next few months.
Yeah, well, that'll be really interesting to keep watching. It's something that's appealing to watch, but it's our favorite sport, right, Jeff?
It's our favorite sport, and we still don't know who to bet on.
Yeah. With that being said, we've got to wind up this episode. So thanks for being with us, and do check us out on amrfinancial.com if you need any help with any aspect of your financial planning or portfolio management.
For listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, call us for help, whether it's financial planning, portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at amrfinancial.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901 or send us your questions to radio@amrfinancial.com.
You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, Financial Talk Show.
Asset Management Resources, LLC, and J. Christopher Boyd, CFP, provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is in the nature of general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. AMR, LLC cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.